The life of one Liliana Vess was upheaved one day when her younger brother, Josu, became deathly ill as a result of some vile scheme, one perpetrated by enemies of their family. Liliana, a member of the Forward Order, initially tries to use the roots of the Essus tree to cure her brother's affliction, but, to her horror, no living Essus trees could be found. When confronted by a suspicious man who offered necromantic advice, Vess turns away, preferring to trust in the healing skills of the Forward Order and medical knowledge she gleans from her family's library. The battle with Josu's affliction is long and arduous, but despite Liliana's best efforts and the knowledge she accumulates, he passes away, dying in her arms. The grief of her beloved brother's loss causes Liliana's latent planeswalker spark to ignite, elevating her to the status of a godlike planeswalker. Empowered, Liliana Vess vows to never again let illness take those within her reach. Time marches on, and Liliana becomes known as a goddess of life and healing. Unlike the Vess we know, she is a compassionate, outgoing individual, one easily swayed into action by the misfortunes of others. In today's video, we are not examining established lore or reading stories produced by WotC. Instead, we are taking a look at the 5 initial members of the Gatewatch and examining how 1 or 2 changes to their origin story could result in a completely different character, one with a different primary color to work with. During the temporal crisis, time rifts opened all across Dominaria, through which one could catch glimpses of alternate pasts, different presents, and possible futures. It is not impossible to imagine that, through one of these windows of possibility, one could see a different Gatewatch, composed of the same, yet drastically different members. One last thing before we continue. This video was inspired by the art of Martina Montrasi over on Twitter. She's created a beautiful reimagining of the Gatewatch in alternate colors, and when I saw this art, I knew then and there that this video had to happen. So if you, like me, are a fan of magic fan art, go ahead and check her out. When Jace Bellerin awakens, he finds himself in an unfamiliar city on an unfamiliar plane. More startling than that, the young man finds that he has almost no memories whatsoever. All he knows is his own name and the fact that he is a planeswalker, one with the ability to travel between worlds. After wandering the streets of this unfamiliar city, the city of Ravnica, for some time, Jace winds up in the care of one Imara Tandris. Eventually, Bellerin is inducted by his caretaker into the ranks of the Selesnya Conclave, as by now the guilds have reformed. Jace's natural talents for telepathy merges with the Doruvati of Mot Selesnya, and he gains a prominent position as a shaman in the clan. Bellerin displays unrivaled skill when it comes to connecting with creatures of the wild, and he is able to summon spectral reflections of any beast he has bonded with. Jace never lost his inquisitive nature. It's just that here, rather than trying to solve puzzles or unravel mysteries, Jace Bellerin is fascinated by the wonders of nature, traveling the multiverse to gain new insight into the lives of various beasts. After 4 years imprisoned at Colophon, Kytheon Iora takes his tutelage under Hyksos to heart, becoming skilled in the art of hieromancy and the study of law. In this timeline, Kytheon is never called upon by Heliod to serve as the sun god's champion. Instead, his spark would ignite while traveling the wilds with his friends, when they would come under attack by a vicious titan, a monster from the very underworld of Theros. Kytheon would end up on an unknown plane, one of several that had, long ago, been visited by the Sphinx planeswalker Azor. Here, Iora becomes fascinated with the study of law magic, something he takes to rather well thanks to his studies of hieromancy. Kytheon, who never becomes known as Gideon Jorah, remains a steadfast champion of good. Here, however, Kytheon employs his mind rather than his martial prowess to subdue the enemy. He takes a practical, straightforward approach to issues, preferring to solve conflicts as peacefully as possible, though he is willing to employ powerful magics if that fails. After visions and disturbing dreams cause the Jaraga tribe to realize she is an animist, Nissa Revane is sent into exile, being seen as a sign of bad luck. Ostracized, Nissa embarks on a spiritual journey, one that ends up with her coming face to face with a vision of the corruption that lurks beneath the surface of Zendikar. Knowing that something, some aberration, threatens her home, the very world of Zendikar, Nissa cries out, at once being infused with all the fury of the world and the wrath of the royal itself. Consumed by rage and a burning desire to destroy this corruption, Nissa's spark ignites. Nissa spends some time on the hostile world of Wildfire before returning home, where she fully embraces her nature as an animist. Nissa embodies the destructive nature of the Royal, calling on its power to shift the landscape and summon both flame and elemental alike. A deep connection to the soul of Zendikar fills Nissa with the rage of her world. Ostracized by her people and bonded to the Royal, Revane is wary of strangers and quick to lash out at perceived slights, but even here, she only wants what is best for Zendikar. The agents of the consulate came at night, while Chandra and her parents, Pia and Chandra Nalar, were fast asleep. The Nalars were aether smugglers, betrayed by a client, and Baral, a corrupt enforcer, was not going to wait for the paperwork to be filed to sate his bloodlust. Chandra was only saved thanks to a friend of the family, an Aetherborn who learned what was happening and whisked the young girl away in the dead of night. This same Aetherborn would adopt Chandra, forcing the girl to suppress her natural pyromantic abilities, in exchange teaching her the Aetherborn secret of siphoning life from others, on the condition that she would only use this power in the most dire of circumstances. Chandra's adopted parent would die just a few years later, and the girl, unable to put aside her desire for revenge, tracks down Baral and drains away his life, the energy surging through her as she commits this murder, the agonizing delight of ripping another's life away, is enough to overwhelm Chandra, and her spark ignites. Nalar would end up on the plane of Innistrad, where she would further explore the arts of draining life, and eventually gained a vicious appetite. Free-spirited and disdainful of authority, Chandra Nalar is one who does whatever she pleases, traveling the multiverse looking for exciting new distractions. Though her personality here remains fun and carefree, those who cross her quickly learn that Nalar is just as cruel and torturous as the rumors claim. Now that we know how the members of the Gatewatch could have changed, how might the multiverse differ with these changes? How might the story of the Gatewatch saga have played out, with the main characters differing so dramatically? Well, for starters, Jace wouldn't become the living guild pact in this timeline. Although how he passes the trials of the implicit maze are unclear, Ral Zarek would become the living guild pact of Ravnica. Jace, instead, takes up journeying across the multiverse to meet creatures from other planes when he's not performing shaman duties for the Selesnya. Perhaps in this timeline, Jace could even become close with another green planeswalker, Garruk. Speaking of Garruk, the hunter never comes under the effects of the Chain Veil's curse. After the mending, Liliana has no need to seek out demons or their contracts, even if she is still a bit vain. Instead, Vess keeps herself young through the use of rejuvenating magics, and perhaps a tiny bit of water from Teleria. Gideon and Chandra would have still likely met under circumstances similar to those from the Purifying Fire, though Gideon would likely have taken longer to warm up to Chandra, a known murderer, if he ever does at all. The Eldrazi would still be freed, as Nicol Bolas still has a desire to undo the efforts of his brother, though in this timeline it would be Nissa, not Chandra, and Kytheon, not Jace, who would be tricked into a confrontation with Sarkhan Vol at the Eye of Ugin. After realizing what had happened, these two would likely form an alliance on the spot, with Nissa staying on Zendikar to try and rally the people and harness the Royal, and Kytheon seeking aid beyond the plane. Jace and Liliana would agree to help, and the Eldrazi might be defeated here with only a few swapped roles. Much like Liliana in the main timeline, Chandra could have joined the Gatewatch as a matter of convenience, though how they confront Emrakul on Innistrad is best left to the imagination. While she had no demons to slay, Nalar still had a vendetta with the Consulate, and planeswalker allies could go a long way to stir up revolution. It's easy to guess that the story could follow much the same as it did in the main timeline, with the Gatewatch discovering Tezzeret's involvement on Kaladesh, and then traveling to Amonkhet to have a showdown against Bolas. However, I like to imagine that in this timeline, Wajani is able to convince Liliana and Kytheon, the two most likely to take up leadership roles in the Gatewatch, to exercise caution. Nicol Bolas is no simple foe. What the dragon plans needs to be uncovered, and more allies are needed to face him. Without knowing what Bolas intends to do, the Gatewatch bides its time, collecting allies for the coming confrontation. And when the interplanar beacon activates, and the War of the Spark begins, Bolas finds himself facing not only the guilds of Ravnica and their guild pact, but a Gatewatch swelling with new members gathered over the last few months. How this conflict would resolve is a question I'll leave to you. Nicol Bolas is one of the oldest and most powerful planeswalkers in the setting. Even with more members, united more strongly than they were in the canon timeline, the Gatewatch is up against one of the most dangerous foes in the multiverse. I believe they could pull it off. That victory could be achieved. But what do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Once again, I'd like to extend a thanks to Martina Montrasi, who inspired this video with her art. Do go and check her out on Twitter. In the meantime, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please cast lightning bolt on the like button and share this video with your friends. If you're subscribed to the channel and turn on notifications, you'll be alerted whenever I upload new videos. Finally, if you want to support me directly, head on over to my Patreon page. Patrons get access to my lore videos early, and their support is greatly appreciated. Thanks again, and have a great day.